Welcome back to Fixing with Friends. We are on chapter 12 of the $300 painting adventure. We are finally getting to actually painting the car. I'm painting my 1975 Datsun 280Z with Tremclad rust paint. And I am doing a full sort of three-stage from the primer to the paint and with clear. All with Tremclad products. They are not sponsoring. It's because they were cheap. I'm going to have comments on that at the end of the video. Now, throughout the video I will probably make reference to the fact that I had painted it previously with the primer and the paint without the clear. It's like a touch-up paint process where I added onto the existing paint, sanding it down a bit. But we're finally at the painting. I'm going to describe the process I took throughout, and then I'm going to have comments on and recommendations at the end of the video. So, let's get started. So, we're back. It has been a while since I've last filmed. I've done a bit more work on the body. The brown stuff is paint. A very thin coat, which ended up being mostly just gloss, which is kind of cool. That's just to prevent the rust from getting the more bare bits of metal. The door is more or less ready to go. Just gotta sand it a little bit. I'm gonna try and strip some more paint off of the panels, the hood, like the front fender, and then the hood. The body I'm gonna just sand and then paint. The lesson here really is that if you're going to do it, and I'll probably repeat this or have repeated this a couple times by the time I assemble this video, do it in pieces. Painting the entire car is a pretty big job. If you have the time or the workers to get it done, just like straight through in a garage, take it apart, do it. There's not so much of a rush. Sorry, is moving on to my next thought, which is if you do it in a tent, it's gonna rust if it sits for a long time, which mine has. It's just the way it ended up going. But yeah, if you take the panels off, maybe do the fenders or one fender at a time, because if you're doing an entire panel, as long as you do the same number of coats, it's going to be more or less the same. The hood, same thing. Doors. Because if you're just painting the exterior, you don't have to pull the panels off. But if you want to do a good job of painting, yeah, it takes time. Do it in sections. You're better off that way. Then you can do, one in a week, like one set of things that you've set aside. Do a really good job on it. Put it back on the car. Continue driving it. That's, again, daily driver versus project car. I've managed, but if I wasn't able to borrow a car or use my other car, I would have had to just like throw a paint job on it and call that job done. Anyway, if you want to look around some more at the other side, looks like, yes, this was entirely covered in that Bondo stuff. Everywhere there's paint, basically, down there to the doors, so much. So, time to get to work, stop chatting. Well, now I have two choices. The first, I continue sanding so it's smooth and then I can have a nice finish for the paint job. The second is I sand it a little bit with some lower grit sandpaper and I end up with lumpy paint. But the car will be less rusty over time. I don't know. So I'm a couple days behind on this project, which is unsurprising, given how it's been going. But I'm going to try and get the first coat of paint in tonight, which means assembling the thing that's going to let me paint properly. Last time I used this compressor, which is wholly inadequate. It gives you about 5 seconds of painting, and then takes about 2 to 3 minutes to refill, which means it takes about 10 hours to do a coat of paint, which is ridiculous. I have this one, which is also inadequate, but way better. I can give you the specs on each later. If you have a better gun, which I may end up buying after we do this first coat, we'll see. It'll use less air. The one I have uses about 9 cubic feet per minute, which is way more than it advertises. Anyway, so I'm going to join these two with this. It's been a while since I intended to paint, so fortunately I kind of pre-fit everything. This is going to go in like that. And then the two compressors will hook up. So this is a reserve tank. It was about 35 bucks. This has a giant tank, so between everything should be more than enough. Unfortunately though, this compressor has a different fitting than the sort of automotive one that I have. Not that you'll be able to see the difference. This one, the end's a bit longer, it's a bit narrower, so this literally won't fit in. But fortunately I might be able to take this one, or I might have a spare fitting that I can use in here. Alright, let's get started. Do I have a valve? I thought for some reason I had a cutoff valve. So I put the couplers on this side instead of a shut-off valve. So I have to start here, work my way up. Alright, that should be good for that one. If it leaks there, I can tighten it later. That's that so far. I may have just wrecked the seal. We'll see. Kind of feels like it. Whatever, I can rewrap them if I need to. Gotta be careful with the brass ones. Make sure your adjustable crescent wrenches are tight, or use a multi-point wrench, like a box end wrench, like an intelligent person would do, but I have not done that. Otherwise, you strip the brass fittings and make your life difficult. So wrap with the threads so that when you thread it, it won't unravel the thread sealant. Make sure that's not blocking anything. Now these. Alright, you can see how they go together. Just gonna wrap them as well. There, let me show you one up close. see how I'm going, or I'm twisting clockwise. Clockwise. So you're just going to wrap. See? So it's all together. I did end up having to retighten this one, as you can see, which meant redoing these two as well, and those two. That's just because I accidentally loosened it in that first little bit when I was tightening one of these ones. That only took about a little bit to redo, but anyway, this is how it's going to be hooked up. Make sense? So, for some reason, this one has a preference to take over. This one should be the one bearing the load, because it can pump a lot faster. It's also not going to wear itself out, whereas that one might overheat if it tries. So, I'm going to have to fiddle with the pressures so that this one kicks on first. So, I have to apologize to you guys. Last night, I did get a coat of paint on. Technically, it was the next day. At about midnight, I rushed to get a coat on, just a light coat, because, you know, it was going to rain the next day, and I didn't want to have to resand the entire car before doing a coat again. That would have just kept putting me back over and over again. So, I've painted one coat. I haven't done the body work yet, like the panel, the front fenders. I'm going to be doing that intermittently when I have like a full day, so probably tomorrow I'm going to finish sanding and prepping the other stuff while I'm doing a coat in here, then do a coat outside, then once it's dry do a coat in here, because unlike the xylene when I tried doing it last time, and also there were temperature differences, this dried really fast. So yeah, and you can see how thin a coat it is over here on the white, because it's still white, like completely. The paint, the spray paint, which you'll see when I videotape it this time, the gun I have sucks. As you can see, that's about as wide as the stroke is, swipe, what I don't remember what it's called, the spread. It's only about 4 inches. Yeah, that's a better example when I did a close-up. So it sucks. It uses a huge amount of air. It doesn't apply paint in a wide pattern, because if it was thin and wide, then you could just go along, it'd be fine. But anyway, it wastes air, doesn't even do a good job. Well, it does an okay job, it just doesn't make it fast or anything. So I may pick one up for the later coats. We'll see how the first couple go, or if I can figure out how to adjust it better, since it's been a while, and it was late at night, or early in the morning I should say. So there's a possibility I was just being an idiot. To painting. So here I'm just running the paint through a cone filter, and it can be pretty slow. I also run some acetone through the gun periodically to make sure that the paint inside the gun doesn't dry and clog up the mechanisms. And so I'm also using it to thin out the paint to get it through the filter just a little bit faster. When you're thinning the paint, you can measure everything out, but because this doesn't have any sort of set measurements for things, I ended up sort of just eyeballing it. And I had done this in the past as well. So you can tell how thin it is based on, you know, whether it's sort of sheeting or dripping, and just by watching the surface tension, because you want it thin enough that it can go through the gun, but not so thin that when you spray it, it runs. So if you're going to do it this way, I would recommend you do some test passes on something else other than the car, and that way you can check what the spread looks like, if it's too thin of a coat that's coming out. Worst case, you can always dump it back out, make the adjustment, and then put it back into the gun. So, sorry about the mask. I made the mistake of coming in here without one, and now I can't stop coughing. Some piece of bird keeps flying in here and on my car in the morning. That really wrecks the paint. That's what caused rust on the in so many spots. There was a couple spots where a bird came in. Don't even know how it came in, honestly, because birds, the urine is in with the so yeah, I probably need to put another coat of primer on just because of that. I was debating, like, this is how it looks right now. It looks more or less okay to put a second coat, or sorry, to start on the color. The texture is quite rough still. The gun is kind of spitting a little, because I think the acetone is just too, it evaporates too quickly. So rather than having a second to kind of conform, when you put the paint onto the car, normally if it has a couple hours to dry, it kind of creates this semi-fluid, viscous form. Sorry, I can't stop coughing. Wear the mask when it's dusty in here. So anyway, when you do that, it becomes kind of uniform, whereas right now it's not. Sanding will take care of that, but you know, it wastes a lot of paint. The more rough it is, the more you have to sand. The nice thing is it seems to be adhering quite well. Obviously when I sanded it, it didn't just come off. I think I'm going to do another coat because in the dark it appears that the sunroof did not get as thick of a coat as elsewhere. And I have to deal with the bird poop. Okay, so we're doing that. So, as you can probably see, I've got a bit of a butcher's shop hanging out here in the tent with me. Alright, so the plan is to get these, hopefully 2 coats on. We'll see how that goes. From the goggles. I noticed
when I was prepping, I missed a spot down there. So I'm gonna sand it and prep it so it's a little bit better finish. It's on the bottom, so it's not the biggest deal, but I would like to fix it before everything's done. So when I go to do the other parts, I'm gonna do that as well. Yeah, I don't know if I wanna, I might as well just pull that off. It's not really on there. Should have done that before. Alright, let's go. So I'm going to have to finish this coat with what's in here. There's a little bit left in the can. Maybe I can get one thin coat out of it on top, just so I can say there's two coats. I don't ultimately need the primer because it's all kind of mixed primer base paint with the rust paint, but we'll see how it goes. I may end up buying some more.
So as you saw earlier, I used 320 before putting down the primer. Between the primer coats, I used 400 grit. And then when I started applying the base coat, I moved up to 600. And then for the clear, I think 1500 was the only one I could find. Coat than I wanted. So looking at it, it's like I have my car back. It needs more coats, but shiny. So that's the episode. My comments, first and foremost, is the Tremclad for, I think these are 1 US gallon paint paint cans. These were $45 when I bought them. They are now 90 some dollars, almost $100 Canadian. Do not buy them at that price, and maybe even just regardless, do not buy this, and I'll talk about that down the road. At $45 a can, that's pretty competitive, but there are better paints for less money, a lot less money. And I paint another project that you will see later with a different paint just to try it, because when I got to Home Depot and found that they were now $90, I could not justify buying it, especially with, like I said, things I will talk about down the road after we get finished the $300 painting adventure. Just some extra comments. The paints that I used, if you were going to use it, these were gloss paints, the black and the white. And then I used the clear coat over top. The clear coat is sort of a, when you open the can, it's sort of a reddish root beer color. So it does give a bit of a yellowy red hue if you use a lot of the clear coat. Now that's not prohibitive, but it's something to take note of. It made the car, in one spot where I put too much on, look kind of like a toasted marshmallow. Lightly toasted, not like some people when they set it on fire, which I have also done. The clear coat seems okay. Honestly though, my experience with Tremclad before I painted the car the first time was every time I'd seen anyone use it, I thought it was junk because it just flaked off whatever they put it on. Granted, my thought was, well, they didn't prep the surface, so I'll give it a try. And then when I tried it on the car previously, just over the existing paint, it worked out just fine. But we're gonna get to, I'm gonna foreshadow a bit. But anyway, the reason I chose Tremclad in the first place and thought that it might be a good idea, in spite of all those things, is someone went through the process of doing it before. And I saw on a forum post someone had their Corvair, they painted it white. They used a roller even, and the finish turned out pretty darn good. So that's why I went down this route. But I'm not going to recommend you do that. I can say you could probably do a fair job with it, with an asterisk. And honestly, the paint turned out pretty well, as you saw. And as you will see more in the next video, which will be reassembling the car, and there will be some shots. I didn't do a whole lot of glamour shots. I kind of intended to, but then there was a debacle involving the window trim, trying to get that back into the windshield molding, and then I had to pull the windshield out again because it made the windshield leak. Anyway, we don't have to get into that right now that I've explained the whole situation. Production's been so slow because I'd spent the last few months working on a couple other projects, not project cars, but projects. If you want to see those, you know, subscribe. If you really are keen on making sure that you see them when they come up, there is that notification bell thing. It's a bit annoying, so I would ignore that. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.